The Galactic Coalition Military Academy floated silently in orbit around a bright blue star. From a distance, it looked like a ring of silver glass, turning slowly against the darkness of space. Inside, thousands of cadets from dozens of worlds trained together. Some were tall and thin with glowing skin. Others moved on multiple legs, some breathed through filters. Every species brought its own technology, its own traditions, and its own pride. Today was evaluation day. Rows of cadets gathered on a wide training platform that stretched so far it seemed endless. Artificial gravity held them steady, and projected environments shimmered around them like distant mirages waiting to become real. Weapons glowed everywhere. Energy rifles hummed with quiet power. Plasma emitters pulsed like living hearts. Smart weapons adjusted themselves automatically to match the body structure of their owners. Floating drones hovered nearby, ready to analyze performance. Among all this advanced technology stood one human. Lieutenant Mara Vance looked small compared to many of the alien cadets. Her uniform was simple. Her movements were calm. She did not speak much. While others compared weapon upgrades or argued about targeting software, she checked her equipment quietly. Her rifle did not glow. It was long and dark, made of metal and composite materials. No power core shimmered inside it. No energy field surrounded it. It looked solid and old. A few cadets noticed immediately. A tall Virelian with bright blue scales tilted his head, staring at the weapon. "Is that projectile-based?" he asked loudly enough for others to hear. Laughter followed. The town engineer clicked his mandibles together in amusement. "Primitive Earth relic," he said. "You brought a museum piece to evaluation?" Mara didn't respond. She continued cleaning the lens of her scope with slow, careful movements. The Crest cadets, tall insect-like beings with reflective eyes, circled slightly closer. One of them scanned the rifle with a small wrist device. "No energy signature," it announced. More laughter. Most species in the coalition had abandoned kinetic weapons long ago. Energy systems were faster, cleaner, more advanced. That was what everyone believed. The instructor arrived before the teasing could grow louder. Commander Halric was massive, his armored skin marked by old scars. He had fought in wars most cadets only read about. When he walked onto the platform, silence fell quickly. "Evaluation begins now," he said, voice deep and steady. "Long-range precision trial, adaptive environments, no assistance from tactical AI beyond basic stabilization." Several cadets shifted uncomfortably. Many relied heavily on automated systems. Holographic terrain rose from the platform floor. Sand dunes stretched into the distance. Heat shimmered. Wind data appeared on hovering screens. Targets blinked into existence far away, small and faint. "Begin." Energy beams fired instantly. Bright streaks of light crossed the desert projection. Targets exploded or shut down as precise energy strikes landed. Mara lay down slowly. She unfolded a bipod under her rifle. Her movements were deliberate, almost ritual-like. She pressed her cheek gently against the stock and looked through the scope. Someone behind her whispered, "She still has to aim manually." Another voice replied, "She must enjoy extra difficulty." Mara breathed slowly. She adjusted a small dial. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger. She waited. A sharp metallic crack echoed across the platform. Unlike the glowing beams, her shot was invisible. A few seconds later, a distant target flickered and fell. The laughter faded slightly. Another round began. The distance increased. Wind patterns shifted. Artificial gravity fluctuations simulated planetary conditions. Energy weapons adjusted automatically, but even advanced systems struggled to maintain accuracy as the environment changed rapidly. Mara tracked quietly. Another shot. Another delay. Another target down. The Virelian cadet frowned now, his earlier confidence replaced by curiosity. "Coincidence," he muttered. The distance increased again. Now the targets appeared almost impossible to see without advanced magnification. Many energy weapons began losing effectiveness. Beam dispersion caused minor errors. Some cadets grew frustrated as their shots scattered. Mara adjusted her breathing. Her rifle did not hum. It did not glow. It simply waited. She fired. The crack sounded small compared to the roaring energy blasts around her. Several seconds later, the target collapsed cleanly. Commander Halric watched closely. He stepped closer, observing her adjustments. He noticed how she accounted for environmental variables without digital assistance. He saw her eyes move slowly, calculating. The training simulation changed again. Now a frozen landscape appeared, thin atmosphere, strong crosswinds. Temperature fluctuations designed to challenge weapon stability. Energy weapons struggled further. Some cadets missed entirely. Mara adjusted elevation carefully. Her gloved fingers turned the dial with precise control. She exhaled, fired. The shot traveled silently. Another perfect hit. The platform grew quieter. The final phase of evaluation was announced. "Extreme range," Commander Halrick said, "beyond direct visual confirmation." A murmur spread through the cadets. Targets would now appear beyond the simulated horizon, requiring complex calculations rather than direct sight. Many cadets relied on AI assistance for such shots. Without it, their confidence dropped. Mara lay still. She studied environmental data displayed on a nearby screen. Wind speed, temperature, rotation of the simulated planet. She whispered numbers softly to herself. Her finger tightened gently. The rifle cracked again. Time passed. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Across the observation monitors, a small light blinked. Target eliminated. Complete silence fell across the platform. The Virelian cadet stared at her weapon. "That shouldn't be possible," he said quietly. Commander Halrick walked forward slowly. He stopped beside Mara and looked down at the rifle. "Earth design?" he asked. "Yes, sir," she replied. "Modified, refined, not replaced." He nodded once. The final target appeared, far beyond anything attempted before. Even the simulation computers warned of extreme difficulty. Some cadets refused to attempt the shot. Mara did not hesitate. She adjusted her position slightly, grounding herself against the artificial floor. Her breathing slowed until it was almost invisible. She fired. The crack echoed like a whisper compared to the earlier chaos. Time stretched. Everyone watched the monitors. Finally, the distant target flickered and went dark. Shock spread across the platform. Commander Halrick leaned toward the Virelian cadet who had laughed earlier. His voice was quiet but carried enough for nearby students to hear. "That weapon kills from worlds away." No one laughed now. Mara stood slowly and secured her rifle. Around her, alien cadets watched with new expressions, not amusement, but respect mixed with confusion. They had believed technology meant glowing energy and complex automation. The human had shown something else entirely. As the evaluation ended, whispers spread across the academy. Who were humans, really? And why did their oldest tools feel more dangerous than the galaxy's newest inventions? Mara walked away without celebration, leaving behind only silence and a question that none of the others could ignore. The silence that followed the evaluation did not disappear quickly. Long after the cadets left the training platform, conversations echoed through the academy halls. Screens replayed the humans' shots again and again, zooming into invisible trajectories and delayed impacts. Analysts slowed footage frame by frame, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Most of the alien cadets had grown up believing energy weapons were the peak of warfare. They were fast, precise, and elegant. Projectile weapons were considered outdated, inefficient, and unnecessary. Yet the human had shattered targets at ranges where energy beams weakened or scattered. Lieutenant Mara Vance walked alone through a quiet corridor. She ignored the stares. Some cadets now looked at her with curiosity instead of amusement. Others watched with caution, as if seeing her for the first time. Commander Halrick stood near an observation window overlooking the stars. He did not turn when she approached. "You did not show everything," he said. Myra remained silent for a moment. "No, sir. I thought so." Outside the window, the blue star glowed softly, lighting the academy's surface. Halrick folded his arms behind his back. "Most cadets rely on their weapons to compensate for weakness. You rely on yourself first." "That's how we train," she replied. Before he could respond, a sharp tone filled the air. Emergency signals flashed red along the corridor walls. The calm atmosphere shattered instantly. "Attention," a mechanical voice announced. "Coalition Emergency Level 3. All personnel report to assigned stations." Mara and Halrick exchanged a glance. Without speaking, they moved toward the nearest command deck. Inside, dozens of officers gathered around a holographic display showing a distant star system. A planet rotated slowly at the center, surrounded by multiple warning symbols. "The Draxian swarm," one officer said, voice tight. "They've entered Coalition territory." The name alone created tension. The Draxians were known for their aggressive expansion. Their ships were heavily shielded and capable of striking from extreme distance using powerful energy bombardment. "Frontier world Keller Prime is under attack," another officer added. "Civilian populations are evacuating, but orbital defense is failing." A projection showed massive enemy vessels positioned far beyond normal engagement range. Coalition ships fired bright energy beams that faded before reaching their targets. "They're staying outside effective distance," Halric observed. "Yes," the officer replied. "They know our limits." Mara watched quietly. She studied the distances displayed on the hologram. Energy weapons required stability and cohesion. Over extreme distances, even advanced beams weakened, but physical objects did not lose mass. Commander Halric glanced at her. "You're thinking something," he said. Before she could answer, a senior admiral appeared via holographic transmission. His expression was serious. "All Academy combat-capable personnel are to prepare for deployment assistance," the admiral said. "We need solutions, not theories." The room filled with urgent discussion. Engineers debated shield frequencies. Tactical officers suggested new formations. Some proposed experimental energy weapons still in testing phases. Mara remained quiet until Halric spoke again. "Lieutenant Vance," he said, "if you were on that battlefield, what would you do?" Several officers turned toward her, surprised that a cadet had been addressed directly. She hesitated only briefly. "Sir, their shields are optimized against energy signatures. They expect beam attacks." "That is correct," the admiral said impatiently. "And they may not be prepared for kinetic penetration at extreme range." Silence followed. One officer shook his head. "Projectile weapons cannot reach that distance." Mara met his gaze calmly. "Most cannot." The admiral leaned forward. "Explain." She stepped closer to the holographic display. "Humans never fully abandoned kinetic systems. We refined them. Improved materials, stabilization, ballistics modeling. Long-range engagement has always been part of our doctrine." "Are you suggesting a single rifle can stop a Draxian command ship?" someone asked with disbelief. "No," she said quietly, "but it can test their assumptions." The room grew thoughtful. Commander Halric nodded slowly. "We don't need to destroy the fleet immediately. We need to disrupt their confidence." The admiral considered this. "You believe a kinetic strike could penetrate their shields?" "Yes, sir. Energy shields disperse heat and radiation. A dense mass moving at extreme velocity interacts differently." Murmurs spread among the officers. Finally, the admiral spoke. "Prepare a limited engagement trial." Within hours, a small shuttle launched from the academy, carrying Mara and a minimal support team. The stars stretched into lines as they jumped toward Keller Prime. When they arrived, the situation looked worse than expected. The Draxian fleet hovered like dark shadows far beyond the range of coalition defenses. Occasional bursts of energy struck the planet below, sending waves of panic through the atmosphere. Coalition ships held defensive positions but could not close the distance safely. Mara studied the battlefield from the shuttle cockpit. "Where do you need me?" she asked. Halric, now acting as field commander, replied through comms. "We've positioned an observation asteroid slightly above orbital plane, stable enough for a firing platform." The shuttle landed carefully on the rocky surface. Gravity was weak, forcing slow movements. Mara stepped out and secured her rifle. The vastness of space surrounded her. The enemy ships were barely visible, tiny points of light. She lay down on the asteroid's surface, anchoring herself with magnetic clamps. Wind did not exist here, but orbital drift and microgravity created new challenges. She adjusted her scope. Coalition observers watched from their ships, unsure whether this would succeed or fail. Draxian vessels continued firing at the planet, confident in their distance advantage. Mara breathed slowly. She calculated orbital rotation, distance, relative motion, time delay. Her finger rested gently on the trigger. She waited. The moment felt endless. Then she fired. The sound was small inside her helmet, a sharp crack quickly swallowed by vacuum. The projectile began its silent journey across space. Minutes passed. Some officers began whispering doubts. Then alarms sounded aboard the Draxian command ship. A small flash appeared along its hull. The ship shuddered. Coalition crews stared in disbelief. The kinetic projectile had struck a weak structural point. Not enough to destroy the vessel, but enough to disrupt systems. The Draxian formation shifted suddenly. "They're confused," Halric said. Mara adjusted her rifle again. She fired a second shot. This time the projectile struck near a propulsion node. Energy shields flared unpredictably, reacting poorly to the non-energy impact. The massive ship drifted slightly off course. Coalition forces cheered quietly. The Draxian fleet began retreating, pulling back to reassess. Mara lowered her rifle slowly. She did not celebrate. She simply watched as the enemy withdrew beyond firing position. Across the battlefield, a new realization spread. Humans fought differently. Back at the academy, recordings of the engagement began spreading rapidly. Cadets who once laughed now watched in silence. Commander Halric's voice echoed through the command channel. "One human with one rifle changed the flow of a battle," he said. "Remember this lesson." Mara remained on the asteroid a moment longer, staring at the distant stars. She knew this was only the beginning. Because now the galaxy would ask a dangerous question. If this was only a human's training weapon, what else were they capable of? The battlefield grew quiet after the Draxian fleet withdrew. Their massive ships turned slowly, engines glowing faintly as they moved away from Keller Prime. Coalition forces remained on high alert, unsure whether the retreat was temporary or permanent. Inside the command deck of the Coalition flagship, officers replayed the footage again and again. The image showed a small asteroid platform, a single human figure, and an invisible projectile traveling through space before striking a warship that had once seemed untouchable. Commander Halric stood silently near the display. Around him, senior strategists argued in low voices. "They were never prepared for kinetic impact at that range," one officer said. "They will adapt," another replied. "They always do." Halric said nothing, but his eyes stayed on the recording of Mara Vance adjusting her rifle, calm and focused despite the scale of the battle. On the asteroid platform, Mara packed her equipment carefully. The mission was technically over, but she felt no sense of final victory. The Draxians were not known for surrendering. They were studying just as the Coalition now studied humanity. Her comm device activated. Halric's voice came through clearly. "Lieutenant, return to shuttle. New orders pending." "Yes, sir." As she lifted the rifle onto her shoulder, she paused briefly and looked at the distant stars. Humanity had learned long ago that battles were often decided by patience rather than power. Today had only proven that lesson again. Back aboard the flagship, the atmosphere felt different. Alien officers watched her enter with quiet respect. The earlier disbelief had been replaced by curiosity and caution. The Admiral appeared via holographic transmission again. "Lieutenant Vance," he said. "Your actions forced the Draxian retreat. Coalition command is impressed." She nodded slightly. "Thank you, sir." "We are also concerned," he continued. "They will return, and next time they will expect kinetic weapons." Mara understood. Surprising an enemy worked once. After that, strategy had to evolve. "What is their current position?" she asked. "They have moved beyond standard sensor range," Halric answered, "but our scouts report they are reorganizing." The Admiral leaned forward. "We need to prepare for escalation." For the first time, several alien officers looked directly at Mara as if waiting for her input. "What would humans do?" one asked quietly. She considered the question carefully before answering. "Humans assume the enemy learns," she said. "So we prepare something new before they return." The command room fell silent as her words settled. Over the next days, Coalition fleets regrouped around Keller Prime, defensive satellites repositioned. Evacuation efforts continued. Meanwhile, Mara assisted engineers in analyzing the battlefield data. Many were fascinated by human weapon philosophy. "You rely on physics rather than energy manipulation," a town engineer said. "Physics is reliable," she replied simply. "What about efficiency?" "Efficiency depends on context." The engineer clicked thoughtfully. Far beyond the planet, Draxian ships gathered again. Their commanders studied recordings of the mysterious kinetic strikes. Shield systems recalibrated. New defensive layers were activated, designed specifically to absorb high-velocity impacts. When Coalition scouts detected their movement, alarms spread across every ship. "They're coming back," Halric announced. The fleet prepared for battle once more. This time the Draxian formation advanced cautiously. Their ships spread out, minimizing vulnerability. Energy bombardment resumed, though at greater distance. Coalition weapons fired back but achieved little. "They adapted," an officer said grimly. Mara watched carefully. Yes, she said quietly. They learned from the last engagement. Then what now? Another officer asked. Halric turned toward her again. Lieutenant, she studied the tactical display. Multiple enemy ships now used layered shielding designed against single kinetic strikes. One projectile is predictable, she said. Humans rarely rely on only one method. Halric's eyes narrowed slightly. Explain. Earth developed multi-stage kinetic systems long ago, not just single impacts, patterns. The Admiral listened closely. You're suggesting coordinated strikes? Yes, sir. If we vary trajectory and timing, shields cannot adapt quickly enough. Coalition engineers began calculations immediately. Several ships equipped with experimental mass driver systems repositioned quietly. Unlike energy cannons, these weapons accelerated dense projectiles using magnetic force. They had never been used at such extreme ranges before. Mara assisted with trajectory planning. She accounted for gravitational fields, orbital motion, and enemy formation patterns. The tension grew as final preparations completed. Ready, Halric announced. The command room fell silent. Fire! Across space, multiple projectiles launched simultaneously. Unlike glowing beams, they moved unseen, silent, and unstoppable. Draxian sensors detected incoming objects too late. One projectile struck near a shield node, causing instability. A second arrived moments later from a different angle, exploiting the temporary weakness. A third penetrated deeper, damaging internal systems. Enemy ships shifted formation in confusion. Coalition crews watched in amazement as kinetic strikes forced the Draxian fleet to abandon its stable defensive posture. Energy weapons followed immediately, targeting exposed sections. The combined assault overwhelmed several enemy vessels. After minutes that felt like hours, the Draxian fleet began retreating again, this time more urgently. Cheers erupted across Coalition ships. Myra allowed herself a small breath of relief. But she knew this victory meant more than just one battle. Later, aboard the Academy once again, cadets gathered in a large training hall. Recordings of the engagement played on massive screens. The same alien cadets who once laughed at her rifle now watched with admiration. Commander Halric addressed them. You believed advanced technology meant complexity, he said. Today you learned that simplicity, skill, and understanding can surpass anything. Mara stood quietly beside him. A young alien cadet stepped forward hesitantly. Lieutenant Vance, he asked, why did humans never boast about this advantage? She looked at the room filled with different species. Because surprise is valuable, she said softly. If they think your weapon is old, they don't see it coming. The cadets nodded slowly. Training resumed in the following weeks, but something had changed. Many alien students began practicing manual aiming instead of relying fully on automation. They studied environmental factors more carefully. Human methods spread through the academy. One evening, Mara stood alone near the observation window where Halric had first spoken to her. Outside, stars stretched endlessly. Halric joined her quietly. You changed more than one battle, he said. She shook her head slightly. Humanity changed it long ago. I just followed training, he nodded. Across the galaxy, news of the engagement traveled quickly. Some species viewed humans with new respect. Others felt uneasy, realizing they had underestimated Earth for too long. Far away on a distant frontier, a small human team prepared another firing platform under alien skies. Their equipment looked simple, almost old-fashioned compared to glowing energy weapons used by others. But those who knew understood. Human strength was not in spectacle. It was in patience, in understanding distance, in trusting the unchanging laws of physics. As Mara watched the stars, she felt a quiet certainty. The galaxy had finally learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology alone. It was the human mind, calm, adaptable, and always thinking one step beyond expectation. And sometimes the oldest tools carried the longest reach.